friends! So today we're going to do a very low-key video. So I think I'm getting ill because I do not feel amazing, and I still wanted to film, so I thought that this video format could kind of be a lot more casual anyway, and I'm very excited because it's sort of an ode to Amelia's now then next videos. So it's Amelia from Amelia Barlow Books, and I just love those videos that she does. It's a different sort of wrap-up style, and I just love the way Amelia does them. I did check with her first if it would be okay for me to do this, so I'm kind of like basically doing the same thing but changing the title. So for me it's going to be past, present, future. So I'm going to go through 2 books that I have just finished reading, 2 books that I'm currently reading, and 2 books that I want to read imminently. And I'm very excited because I love talking about the books I'm currently reading, some of the books that I've finished reading when I'm in the mood to talk about them. That's why I don't really like doing wrap-ups, because I find them quite tedious when you have to like wrap up or talk about books that, I don't know, you don't really want to talk about. So in this format, you can kind of pick and choose, which is really fun. And also, like I say, talk about some of the books I want to read imminently that I haven't mentioned in any of my TBR videos. But without further ado, I'm going to stop rambling and get into talking about the books. The first book I want to talk about that I finished recently is A Spell of Good Things by Ayobami Adebayo, who's the author of the book Stay With Me, which was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I believe Stay With Me was much loved on booktube and in the book community as a whole, and it's one that I really want to read at some point, but this is the first book by this author that I have read. I do believe Stay With Me was her debut novel and this was her follow-up, but this one follows 2 families in modern day Nigeria. One of them is following a young boy called Eniola, whose family has fallen on hard times. His father has lost his teaching job and they are in very bad poverty, to the point where they are begging on the streets. They have no food, and things like that. So for a lot of the book, it does follow Eniola's story, how it is as a young boy having that sort of man figure who has sort of like let him down, his dreams and aspirations, as he's kind of at that age where you believe that anything is possible despite the circumstances you're in, and it's him slowly coming to the realization that actually his dreams and aspirations are very unlikely to come true. And on the opposite side of that, obviously, the second family is a quite well-off family living in Nigeria, but in that family, the story mainly focuses on Wuraola, who is the sort of golden girl of the family, as she is just recently become a doctor, and she is in a relationship with the politician's son. So she's in a relationship with the son of a politician. So as you can see, the 2 opposites are very interesting in the same sort of area. You're reading about what it's like to sort of strive and what it's like to not strive. It's a very interesting book in terms of it shows what it's like to live in modern day Nigeria and the spectrum of that, and even the struggles of a family who are supposedly well off. The one thing I really enjoyed seeing was in Wuraola's family, in the sort of like female side of the family, there's a chapter where it goes into the generations of the women and what they've had to do in order to stay in the position they're in. For example, marry rich men or men from good families, and also aside to that, make sure they are making their own sort of financial decisions that maybe their like husbands are unaware of. For example, secreting and saving jewellery just in case anything for whatever reason goes very wrong. They've still got something to fall back on, and I really loved seeing that, you know, that the females in that family were so strong-headed to the point where, yes, in this society we have to rely on men, you know, to have the life we want, but it doesn't mean that if everything goes wrong, I cannot be prepared. So I did like that side of things as well. Overall, I did really enjoy reading this. However, I ended up giving it 3 stars, mainly because the whole premise of this book, I think, was to see how these two families end up being intertwined, but that doesn't really happen until right at the end. And I kind of felt like it was a lot of build up to that, when I would actually have liked the build up to have taken... Basically, what happens at the end, I would have liked it to happen in the middle, so then we saw the aftermath of what happens at the end for both of these families. I felt like maybe more could have been picked out from that, instead of just focusing on the differences between these two families for most of the book. And it, in some points, became kind of repetitive and a bit slow. The pacing I kind of found a bit difficult. However, I enjoyed the writing, I really enjoyed the setting, and like I say, all of the discourse and sort of intricacies around like politics and poverty and sexism, the struggles for women, especially in Nigeria. So all of that was very, very interesting, and it has made me really, really want to pick up Stay With Me. And the next book I want to talk about that I recently finished is Poems by Len Penny. So this met my expectations. So this one had been on my radar for I think over a year, or about a year. And it was highly anticipated. I'm so grateful to Canon Gate for sending me a copy of this. Essentially, if you want a poetry collection that brings out the angry woman in you, then read this one. So what I love about the introduction is that Len Penny says, I'm really sorry that the collection, that there isn't more happier poems in the collection, but unfortunately this is just the life that I have led, or women in general lead, and the kind of things that, you know, we have to put up with. So I would say don't go into this expecting happy poems, because they're definitely not happy. But I love how raw they are, how open and honest they are. There are so many poems in this that I myself have related to. There was one poem I actually had to skip because I could tell it was going to emotionally destroy me, and I just couldn't. I'm hoping to come back to it at another point when I'm maybe ready to read it. And in terms of the way the poems are written, it's a mashup of English poems and also poems in the Scottish dialect. It was actually very interesting reading the poems in the Scottish dialect, because I really had to kind of turn on my deep Scottish accent in my head in order to read and understand them. But I liked the challenge that it gave me, and also sort of like in terms of reading it in the Scottish dialect, then having to sort of translate, I guess, the poem into English in my head. Because my mum is Scottish, so I do know a lot of the Scottish dialect, and obviously some of the words that they use and their meaning. So I like the challenge of, like I say, you know, reading it in the Scottish dialect and then translating it into its meaning in English. And I guess it made me realise I hadn't read a poetry collection that challenged me like that in quite some time. But I would like to know what it would be like to read for someone who maybe isn't used to the Scottish dialect and how they find it. But yes, overall, amazing poetry collection. 5 stars, would highly recommend it. One I will definitely be returning to. Yeah, just so moving, so just everything I wanted it to be and more. Now moving on to the books that I'm currently reading. I'm so excited about talking about the books I'm currently reading because they're both such great books, and I'm kind of glad that with one of them I'm kind of taking my time with it. It is taking me a little while to read because I don't know why, I'm just taking my time with it, and that's fine. But that is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I realised I don't know why I don't have the dust jacket, so holding this up is going to be kind of pointless. But I am just about halfway through this one. I'm not going to give you a synopsis, or I'm going to give you a very brief synopsis because everyone knows what this one's about. It's a dark academia with a sprinkling of fantasy, historical fiction novel based in Oxford, where there is a college at Oxford University called Babel, or an institution called Babel, which is the institution for translation. And basically there's so many things I am loving about this book. So I'm loving the writing style. It's so easy to read. It just like flows. In a way, I'm kind of sad I didn't just devour this in one sitting, or not one sitting, but kind of had some time off to just read it, because I think that would have been quite enjoyable and easy to do. I love the way R.F. Kuang has used the concept of language and colonialism and brought that through the story historically, and obviously through the fantasy sort of setting, and it's just so cleverly done. I can see why obviously this one is so popular. I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen. I've got to a point in the middle of the book where I'm a bit like, this could go one of two ways and I'm not sure which way it's going to go. But yes, this is, I think, definitely going to be a 5-star read for me. I'm so sad I haven't picked it up sooner. I also love sort of like the dark academia aspect. There is a sort of secret society that the main character Robin gets involved in. There's a lot of unanswered questions currently that I cannot wait, to get the answers to and see what happens. And again, this is the first R.F. Kuang book I have read or have picked up, and because of the writing style, it has made me want to read her fantasy trilogy, because I now realise how easy her books are to read. I think the size of them has always put me off, but like I say, loving her writing style has made me just want to pick them up regardless of their size. So yes, hopefully when I finish this one, I might be able to talk a bit more about it, but we will see. And the other book I am currently reading, that I started reading about a week ago, and I have just powered through, and I just love it. I'm so happy, but at the same time, I can't believe I've only just picked it up. But that is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. I am over halfway. I've only got this much left to read. I am listening to it on audiobook, which I'm adoring. Just any spare moment I have to listen to the audiobook, I'm choosing to do that. It is truly the most comforting book ever. So the one thing that I did enjoy about this was I thought that it was a retelling or a story about Mary. Obviously, out of all the Bennet sisters, Mary is the one that kind of, in Pride and Prejudice, she kind of gets left out, because she's always, it's just Mary, and I thought that this took place after Pride and Prejudice, but actually it starts sort of like, not before, yes, before. It does start before, because then you get to the bit where Mr. Bingley moves into the house next door. So you kind of get to see Mary's perspective of events that happen in Pride and Prejudice up to a certain point. It doesn't go through the whole of Pride and Prejudice, obviously. I think it's up to when Lydia elopes with Mr. Wickham. And then it kind of does a 2-year skip, and it just follows Mary, obviously everyone else is settled down and married, and it's just Mary thinking she's never going to find anybody because she's plain, she's this, she's that. Another thing I'm really enjoying about this is it's kind of going into Mary's self-esteem issues, I guess. And there are so many bits and interactions with so many different characters, and obviously characters that you're familiar with, and Janice Hadlow has just done the best job of continuing those characters and developing them, but they're still the characters that are from the original book. There hasn't been one point where I've thought, oh no, Elizabeth wouldn't say that or wouldn't do that. Another thing I've really, really enjoyed is Mary's friendship with Charlotte. Obviously, because in Pride and Prejudice, it's Elizabeth and Charlotte that are best friends. But one thing that you don't really see is that actually Mary and Charlotte have got a lot in common, and they have conversations about things all the time. And then in the 2-year skip, she goes and stays with Charlotte when she's married to Mr. Collins. And yeah, like I say, her interactions with basically every person in Pride and Prejudice, it's just been so wonderful so far. What I'm really liking now is she's in London, staying with her aunt, and she's getting her confidence a little bit more, finding that the busyness of London makes her feel less like she doesn't belong because there's so many other people around. You know, you're like one small person in a crowd, and that can actually make you feel really confident and feel like you're meant to be there. And I think I can see where the love interest is going. Another thing that was really surprising that is actually Mary has had quite a few love interests at this point, which I wasn't expecting. And I think there might be a kind of conclusion to that at the end, that this whole time she's thought that she was never looked upon by men, was never understood, that people didn't like her. And actually at this point there's been at least, this is maybe the fourth man that has shown interest in her, but she still has that thing in her head that like, why would they be interested in me, kind of thing, compared to all my other sisters or all these other women that are around. So yes, I'm very much enjoying this. This is definitely going to be a 5-star read, and one that I can see myself returning to again and again. And it's just shown me how much Mary is underappreciated, and it has, I kind of want to say I like her more than Elizabeth now, which is something I was never expected to say because I love Elizabeth. Yes, so very, very happy that I finally picked this one up. So now moving on to the books that I want to read imminently. Like I say, these are books that I have not included on any recent TBR videos, and this next book is one that I've bought recently, and also one I think is going to help me with the inevitable reading slump I'm going to be in after I finish the other Bennett sister. I can just see it happening. I just know it's going to happen. It's going to leave a massive hole in my life, kind of like Pride and Prejudice did when I read that. So I feel like this book is going to fill that hole quite nicely. And that is The Secrets of Hartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden. So that is obviously Katie from Books and Things. If you haven't already, I would totally check out her channel. I'm going to link everyone I've mentioned obviously in the description box below. But yes, I've been waiting for the paperback of this to come out for ages, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So I picked it up last weekend, and it's got that new book smell, which I love. But when I was flicking through it, I noticed that the chapters are really short, and that's one of the things I love about the other Bennett sister. The chapters are really short, so that's why I'm like absolutely speeding through it. So like I say, I think that this is just going to be the book I need to read next. So I'm going to read the synopsis just so you guys know what this one is about. But it says, Margaret Lennox is recently widowed in need of a position. It must be far from the past that still haunts her. She finds that appears to be the perfect engagement, governess to a child in an isolated country house. Yet far from the first, Hartwood Hall is unwelcoming. But why do the locals eye her employer, widowed Mrs. Eversham, with suspicion? What is hidden in the abandoned East Wing? Who are the strangers coming and going in the dark? Hartwood Hall conceals mysteries, perhaps even danger, but Margaret bears her own secret, one she fears more than anything. So I've heard that this is kind of like an ode to Katie's like favourite classical Gothic novels. So, you know, things like Rebecca, Jane Eyre, with the widowed Mrs. Eversham, I'm getting sort of like hints of Great Expectations. I don't know, but I feel like I'm going to really, really enjoy this because obviously some of my favourite books include Rebecca, Jane Eyre. I do love classic Gothic novels so much, and the people who I very much trust on booktube, like Charlotte from Queenie Reads, I think gave this 5 stars and said that I will really, really enjoy it too. So I'm really excited about reading this one. And the last book I want to talk about today, which is the second book that I hope to pick up soon, is another one I'm really excited about because it will be a reread, and I haven't read this book since I was in high school and I absolutely adored it. But the reason why I haven't reread it is because I enjoyed it so much that I was scared during a reread it wasn't going to live up to my original, I remember being on the bus and getting to a very shocking part of this book, and that memory is sort of like stuck in my head, and I don't want the reread to take that away. But I think enough time has passed now that I think that it's not going to do that. And also I've completely forgotten basically everything that happens in this book apart from the atmosphere of it. And this book was actually at my mum's house, and since going to get it, both my mum and my boyfriend have looked at the cover and been like, oh my god, what is that? That looks amazing. And I think the cover of the book captures the atmosphere of the book, and it's an entire series, and I didn't carry on with the series, so I'm going to reread this one, and I plan to carry on with the series because I did buy the second book second hand recently. And I've also learned, because it's like a 9 or 12 book series, but actually it's in 3 parts, if that makes sense. So it's a long series, but it's broken up into 3 books. So I can do that. But the book I'm talking about is Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. And I can't believe I never continued with the series, and I've left it so long to reread this. But as you can tell, I'm very excited about it. So this is a teen book series, and it follows a skeleton detective called Skullduggery Pleasant. And essentially what happens in this book is it follows, not the detective specifically, it follows, I don't know her name, I think a girl called Stephanie, and either her parents die, and at the reading of their will, Skullduggery Pleasant turns up, and her life literally just turns into this craziness of things that she didn't know existed, and it's just plot twist after plot twist after plot twist, and she gets caught up in this world of skeleton detectives and this sort of demon underworld, and she starts fighting crimes with him, and it's just the best thing ever. So you can definitely expect me to be talking more about this book in this series, if it still lives up to the hype and expectations, which I believe it does, because I know that there was a read-along that I was going to take part in, but I ended up not doing so, of a reread of this entire series. So there's a lot of people on booktube that love this series, and yeah, I'm very excited to re-enter this world. I think I'm massively excited because some of the books that I've read recently I haven't really enjoyed, and then the books I'm currently reading I'm really enjoying, and I'm hoping that the books I plan to read soon I'm also going to love. So that is it for today's very rambly, very casual video where I feel like I've just gushed over some books. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, if you enjoyed this video, if you want to see me do more of these types of videos, and thank you again to Amelia for letting me semi-steal her idea, or steal her idea. But if you enjoyed this, then you should definitely check out Amelia's videos. They're way more coherent than me, but like I said, I'm going to link them in the description box for you anyway. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye.